Thank you for coming to this talk this evening. My name is Balogh, and I have been doing project management, program management, and leading PMO offices for the last 15 years in fintech organizations. And today I'm going to talk about generations and what we're facing in the workforce today in terms of generational challenges. Okay, I have found the forward button. So first I will start with two forces that are determining our population, but especially our workforce. And the first force is the rising life expectancy. So in the last 100 years, fortunately, we have doubled our life expectancy, and we have doubled the years in healthy condition, which means that we can all live and work much longer. So what does it mean for the workforce? Older generations stay longer at the office. The other force that is determining our workforce population is the declining birth rate. So you all live in developed countries, and here you can see the graph of the birth rates in developed countries. So all around the world, the birth rate declined below the reproduction rate, right? So while we're living longer, there are fewer and fewer people coming to the workplace. And those people who are coming to the workplace, they are more and more different because of the technological and the economical changes, right? We have more and more generations. So next year is going to be the first year when the first Gen Alpha will start to work. They will become 18 years old. So we will have at the workplace by 2033, we will have 5 generations with 5 different emotional composition and preferences, all working together. Now, I have a question at this stage. We talked about these two forces. Which force do you think has a stronger effect on the workforce? The longer life expectancy or the declining birth rate? The second, right? So unfortunately, yes. So the way we stand at the moment, because so few people are joining the workforce, all of us will have to work 7 years longer than we would have to if the birth rate would be normal and not declining. So expect to work 7 years longer than you would be. Okay, I think everybody knows the generations, right? This talk should not be basically about each generation. But maybe it makes sense to refresh what makes a generation. So why are we calling new generations every 10, 15, or 20 years? So a generation is defined by the experiences during their early informative years. So basically their first 7 years and then their young adolescence. So what things actually happen there? What is the political framework? What is the technological framework? What is the media framework during this time while they actually grow up? And this is a summary of the key events, let's say, for the generations. Now, I would like to ask you to reach this page, because instead of going through the traits for each of the generations, we're going to play a little bit. Okay? So I hope everybody sees some colorful web page with the names of the generations, right?
Yeah, right.
Okay, super, thank you. So we're going to play something called the generations bingo. So each of these colors represent a generation, and I'm going to show you an attribute, and your job is to guess which generation that attribute actually belongs to. And you can kind of show me the color, and we will see the color, what is the consensus in the room, and then we can see whether you guys are right or not. So the first attribute for a generation regarding the preferred work lifestyle is that this generation is the work-life balance pioneers, and they work hard, play hard. So press the button. Okay. A lot of blues, a lot of purples, but I think purples are in majority. Yes, this is Gen X. Thank you. Next one, collaborative approach. This generation is team-oriented, values diverse perspectives. Blue, millennials, a lot of blue. Yes, you're right. This is the millennials. Next one, or attitude towards goals. So this generation values entrepreneurship. More than half of them want to start their own business. They love skill development, and social impact is very important for them. Blue, 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 blue. Do I see any purples? Yeah, this is Gen Z, I think, right? Yeah. Okay, attitude to risk and autonomy. So they prefer high autonomy, they're independent decision makers, they're comfortable with calculated risks. Purple, blue, purple, blue. Okay, this is Gen X. Next, communication. They love synchronous face-to-face meetings, phone calls, and formal memos. Okay, baby boomers. Okay, this was easy, right? Attitude towards AI and digital tools. They are early adopters. They integrate digital tools to maximize productivity and streamline processes. Okay, it's between millennials and Gen Z, right? Yeah, this is the millennials. This generation is good at deep expertise, mentoring, institutional knowledge, and process optimization. Also very easy, right? Purple, very good. Baby boomers. And the last one, this generation needs supports connecting work to the clear purpose. They want flexible work arrangements and rapid skill development. Yes, so this is Gen Z. So I hope you guys liked this little exercise. Now we're going to talk about something more serious. I'm going to try to frame the problem. So usually at this stage, there's a slide with all kind of statistics saying like how dangerous the situation is if we leave generations untreated, or if we neglect this problem. But what I was really curious when I did the research for this presentation is what would be the first sign for a manager, for people like you, to know that, okay, I might have a problem and I might need to do something with the generations within my team. And the studies are saying that if you notice an age gap within your team, which is about a decade, 12 plus years, plus or minus, then that's your first sign, that's your first clue that you need to consider generations during your managerial practice. Why? Because in teams which have this age gap within them, the employees are 3 times more likely to be extremely dissatisfied. Not just dissatisfied, but like really dissatisfied. And I can also show you the other statistics from all the studies that if you don't consider the generational point of view, then you can have these kind of problems, like 67% of the companies face conflicts between age groups. 65% of Gen Z says that they are struggling at the workplace, and so on. But I want to finish this slide not on a negative note, but on a positive note, because during my research, I have also found that there is an opportunity in age-diverse teams. And the opportunity is that age-diverse teams, with effective collaboration, they can produce 41% more innovative solutions. And for the rest of the presentation, this is what I would like to walk you through, how to get there, based on the studies that I have found and the research. So why do we have a generational opportunity? Imagine that you have an employee who is quite talented. Let's say a person with an IQ of 120, right? And very similar people, you make a group, you make a team of all 120 IQ people. What do you think their combined IQ will be? Will it be higher? Will it be the same? Or will it be lower? Who says it will be higher? Showing hands. Okay. Who says that the team IQ will be the same, 120? Okay. Who says it will be lower? Yes, okay. So the majority is correct. Yes, the IQ will drop. And there are super many psychological studies why this is the case for homogeneous groups. But what I think you can also recognize is that the main causes are 2 things: groupthink, echo chambers, and solidified traditions and basically rigidity within the team. So this, yes. So instead of the previous example, what we want is we want to raise the IQ so that a very smart person with a team can achieve something like an IQ 130 or more. And it suggests, the previous slide suggests that there is something else that determines this more than just the IQ of the individual person. And this factor is the interaction and the communication patterns within that team. So 60% of the team intelligence depends on how the members interact and not how they actually are, right? So how can we hack this communication and interaction pattern? What is the primary way? And there are many studies that examine this, and they all come to the same conclusion, that it is diversity, right? So if you exchange your homogeneous team to something that is actually diverse, you will break those communication patterns, you will break the rigid interactions, and you get a much better performing team. Now, diversity can be measured on different dimensions, and the number 1 dimension that can break this pattern is gender diversity. Okay, so include girls into boys groups and boys into girls groups, and that will make things so much better. The number 2 dimension to break this pattern is actually age, right? So bring different generations together, increase the diversity that way, and then you get a much better team. And the number 3 diversity factor is culture. So this is how you can multiply the effects. Now, how much can we gain if we introduce age diversity, right? There are many studies, especially for the EU. They made many studies, but I have found one from a Swiss company that have connected the age diversity to EBITDA figures. Okay, so what they found is that 10% increase in age diversity translates into 3.5% productivity gain year on year. Whether they are correct or not, that can be debated, but it's a huge study. This is the study by the Swiss Leading House, done in 2013. And they connected age diversity, which is measured by standard age and mean age, and cost-benefit analysis, right? So they have found that for every company, there is an age star. So there is an age composition, basically, of teams, which will result in an optimal cost-benefit ratio. Now, there is no number that they can assign to it. This is different for every company, but this can be measured, and they created a process to that as well. An interesting side note to this study is that unlike for personal aging, where as you age, you tend to perform less and less, for companies, if you increase the average age of the company for a very long time, you still have a positive effect. So working with older people or including older generations has a positive effect for the company. So now, I'm checking the clock. I would like to give you 5 actual real tips from actual studies how to include the generational perspective in your day-to-day work or in your business. For the first one, I actually don't have a study because I think this is kind of a common sense approach, right? Whenever you have a project or whenever you have a business, you usually discover your business context, your project context, right? You should also discover your generational context. Why? Because you might find some unique opportunities. So for example, for a fintech team with our background, we could utilize Gen Z to quick prototyping for the new user interfaces for the new generations. We can utilize the millennials who can bridge the matrix structures. They are super good communicators, they are very good collaborators, so they are the ones who will be bridging the business with the development, and they make the project run smoother. Gen X is famous about making things work, making a robust product, so all those Gen X people can be utilized there. And the baby boomer is actually perfect to handle the auditors and the regulators with deep process knowledge, with the respectful nature, and so on. So this is kind of common sense once you include the generational context into your thinking. The next tip is coming from the Harvard Business School. They made a study that if you also examine your customer base and the generational composition of your customer base, and you mirror it within the organization, so you have the same generational composition, then your customer satisfaction grows by 33%. So if you're making a product for the younger people, your company should mostly have younger people, right? But there are a couple of tips that you can do anyways. You can introduce in the customer journeys some multi-generational teams. In the product life cycle, you can introduce generational perspective checks. In the marketing, although marketing people probably already know this, they will include the generational viewpoints. And for the UX teams, you need to consider which generation prefers what type of user interfaces. I am testing an application right now, and I included something quite new UX feature. It's called the Fast Access button. It's super mobile-centric, let's say, but I included it anyways in the desktop application. And from the test users, none of the Gen X users actually noticed that the button is there, right? And all the Gen Z people use all the functions through that button. So, so it makes sense to think about that. The next tip, right? This is coming from the Stanford University, where they experienced 47% fewer generational conflicts and 38% higher cross-generational collaboration. What they did, basically, they educated the organization about generations, but beyond the stereotypes, right? So going into the reasons, what happens in the influential years, and why each generation is kind of like they are. And then with these multi-generational groups, they established the clear expectations that there is no one leading generation, right? So the baby boomers are not the best, or Gen X is not the best, but each generation needs to adapt to the other. And they created structured opportunities to experience each other's approaches. So these were things like brown bag sessions about the history of the technology that they were using, right? Like, how did the C language actually start? And the boomers can explain that, while the younger generations can explain how to use the latest application, and, for example, how to use AI properly. And they created also opportunities to praise and celebrate whenever such adoption actually happened. So this is one practice that you can use and consider if you have high conflict rates. Another tip or another method from INSEAD, the business school, is what they call the knowledge transfer acceleration. And this resulted for them increased innovation rates and reduced error rates. So what they did was that they examined the knowledge domains and their business domains, and they identified which generation actually holds the highest knowledge, basically, in that area. Then they created paired relationships between generations, and they made these pairs to actually do the documentation and to do the design work together. What this resulted in is that the old knowledge has been updated with the latest knowledge, and they captured a very good state of the system, and they were able to innovate and work much better based on this. And finally, the increase in innovation that I mentioned in the previous slide, this is coming from Stanford University, and they created a very specific method to actually test this for a study. So they created the age diverse teams anyway, and they used thinking style based ideation and brainstorming. You probably know the thinking caps method or the Balogh caps method, where you say that within a team, within a brainstorming, there is somebody who's a white hat, a black hat, a red hat, and so on. somebody who only cares about the truth, somebody who's only greasing the wheels, and so on. So this type of ideation has been dealt out across the generations, and this is how they run the innovation workshops. They evaluated it, then they rotated the perspectives for the next session, and so on and so on. And this method increased their innovative solutions compared to the homogeneous teams, because they also run a control for this. So these are the 5 tips and some key takeaways at the end. What you should take away, right? Recognize the generational context. Now you know a lot about it. You can bookmark the URL where we played, because at the bottom of those pages, you can see the traits for all the generations in detail. You can take it home and you can use it. You should specialize your approach towards the 4, and then from next year, the 5 generations. You can use tricks like I mentioned for the fintech company. You need to recognize the frictions, right? So remember those 12-year gaps and examine the team. What is your age contribution? And yeah, try to use the generational preferences to your advantage, at least now that you have in your back pocket. And finally, the final thought is that even if, let's say, we crack this generational team productivity, and let's say all 5 generations are working together, and we hack this 41% performance increase, even then, we will not be able to reproduce in the future the current productivity rates because of the declining fertility rate, right? So we will need further performance enhancers. It's a definite. Now, AI is on the table for everyone. I think everybody's working with AI right now. AI is definitely part of that solution, but I think we will need other strategies as well. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Guys, who has a question to Peter?